Civilization falls and humans gather together. It's instinctive. Alone, you're vulnerable. Together, you multiply your chances. More hands to work, more eyes to watch, more minds to solve problems. This is why communities emerge from chaos. Throughout every documented societal breakdown, people organize into collectives. History proves that groups outlast individuals. But here's what the history books won't tell you clearly. Not all groups make it. In fact, most don't. Every collapse produces the same 5 group types. Different structures, different values, different approaches to staying alive. 4 of them die horrible deaths. Only 1 endures. Knowing which one isn't academic curiosity. It's the difference between watching your children starve and keeping them alive, between dying in the first winter and seeing the next decade. You will join a group, form a group, or fight against groups. Your life depends on recognizing what kind of group you're dealing with and whether they have any future at all. The group that survives isn't the one most people bet on. Not the strongest, not the best equipped, not the most prepared by conventional standards. The survivors understand something about human organization that the dead never figured out, something that contradicts every instinct, every movie, every preparedness manual you've ever read. Let me show you the 5 groups that emerge from every collapse, what they look like, why they form, what kills 4 of them, and which one lives while all others perish. The warrior compound. Heavy weapons, heavier casualties. This is every prepper's fantasy. Former military, ex-law enforcement, tactical enthusiasts forming a paramilitary organization. Weapons stockpiles, rigid command structure, military-style operations. The group that looks most capable from day one. Their structure follows military hierarchy. Someone commands, others obey. Chain of command is explicit. Orders flow down, information flows up. Highly organized roles. Massive arsenal and tactical gear. Rifles, body armor, night vision, communication equipment. They look like a professional military unit, everyone armed and equipped to similar standards. They establish a fortified position as their base. Defensive positions, overlapping fields of fire, reinforced structures. Military thinking applied to static defense. Aggressive patrolling and security operations. They run patrols, establish perimeters, control territory around their position. They project force to deter threats. Training and drills. They practice tactics, simulate scenarios, maintain discipline through structure and routine. They're preparing for the violence they expect will define post-collapse survival. Why do they form? Warrior compounds form because people with military or law enforcement backgrounds default to what they know. They're trained in hierarchical organizations. They're comfortable with hierarchy. They adopt military structure automatically because it's their experience. They also attract people who romanticize tactical operations, wannabe operators who see collapse as an opportunity to live out military fantasies. They join because they love the gear, the structure, the feeling of being warriors. The warrior compound offers immediate visible security. Heavy weapons and trained people make the group appear safe. Newcomers feel protected by the firepower and organization. Why do they fail? Rigid hierarchies break under stress. Military hierarchy works when supported by institutional infrastructure. In collapse, when the commander makes bad decisions, subordinates can't effectively challenge them without breaking the structure. Bad leadership kills the group while everyone follows orders. Resource consumption is unsustainable. Military operations consume ammunition, fuel, supplies rapidly. Patrols burn fuel, training uses ammunition, equipment requires maintenance. The warrior compound depletes resources faster than they can acquire them. They run dry despite being heavily armed. They create enemies through force projection. Every time they patrol or establish territorial control, they're challenging others. They make enemies of other groups. They provoke conflict through displays of strength. Eventually, they encounter overwhelming numbers or someone better armed. The aggressive posture that seemed like strength becomes why they're targeted. Internal conflict over tactics and strategy. The group attracts strong personalities who think they know the right answer. When situations don't match their training, they argue about approach. Factions form. The group fractures over tactical disagreements that become personal conflicts. Military mindset applied to survival situations fails. Military operations have supply lines, reinforcements, defined objectives. Collapse survival is indefinite duration, no resupply, no clear victory conditions. Tactical thinking doesn't translate to survival reality. They're fighting a war they can't win because survival isn't a war, it's attrition. Overconfidence kills them. They believe their training and equipment make them superior. They take risks based on that belief. They engage threats they should avoid. Eventually, they lose men in unnecessary firefights. Each loss weakens the group. After enough losses, they can't maintain operations. Timeline to failure? 3 to 6 months. They burn through ammunition in the first months defending territory and running operations. They lose men in combat. Internal conflicts intensify as resources deplete. By 6 months, they've either fragmented into smaller pieces or been eliminated by accumulated enemies. The neighborhood watch. Democracy dies in the darkness. This is the neighborhood watch that scales up. Neighbors who knew each other before collapse, banding together to maintain order and share resources. They're trying to preserve pre-collapse social values like cooperation, fairness, democratic decision-making. Their structure is inclusive participation. Anyone from the neighborhood can join. They hold meetings where everyone votes on decisions. Leadership is rotated or elected. Very egalitarian structure.
Resource sharing. Food, water, skills are pooled. They establish community gardens, water collection, security rotations. Everyone contributes what they can. Distribution aims for equity. Defensive, not aggressive posture. They establish a perimeter around their neighborhood. They defend themselves but don't patrol beyond their area. They're not seeking conflict. They try to maintain pre-collapse norms. They have rules. No stealing from each other. No violence within the group. Disputes are mediated. They're trying to keep civilization alive through social contract. Why do they form? Neighborhood coalitions form because humans naturally trust people they already know. Neighbors band together because they have established relationships. They know each other's names, families, histories. Pre-existing social bonds create the foundation. They also form from the desire to maintain normalcy. People want to believe their neighborhood can stay civilized, that cooperation and fairness will work. They cling to pre-collapse values because accepting those values are useless is psychologically devastating. The community group feels morally correct. It's rewarding to cooperate, share, help neighbors. This moral appeal attracts people who want to be good even in collapse. Why do they fail? Free riders destroy the system. Some members contribute less than they receive. They skip security shifts. They eat more than their share. They fake illness to avoid work. The cooperative system depends on everyone contributing fairly. When some don't contribute, resentment builds. Eventually, contributors refuse to keep supporting free riders. The system collapses from internal unfairness. Democratic decision-making is too slow. Emergency situations require fast decisions. When the group needs to decide whether to evacuate, whether to let strangers join, whether to use force against threats, they hold meetings, they debate, they vote. By the time they decide, the situation has evolved. Opportunities were missed. Threats weren't addressed fast enough. Democracy can't respond to rapidly changing crisis conditions. Inclusivity becomes a security vulnerability. They let anyone from the neighborhood in. Some people shouldn't be in the group. Some are liabilities, sick, injured, unwilling to work. Some are threats, criminals, mentally unstable, violent. The inclusive policy means they can't exclude dangerous or useless members without violating their own values. Including everyone weakens the group. It attracts predators. A cooperative, peaceful group with shared resources is a perfect target. Gangs see the neighborhood coalition as inventory. They attack with overwhelming force. The community tries to defend, but isn't equipped or trained for violence. They're overrun and their resources are taken. Internal conflicts over fairness are insoluble. Someone thinks food distribution is unfair. Someone else thinks another family isn't contributing enough. These disputes consume endless time in meetings. Factions form around different visions of fairness. Eventually, the group fragments as people split off to form smaller groups with those who share their values. The social contract breaks when resources become truly scarce. When there's abundance, sharing is easy. When food is running out and people are starving, parents with children look at childless singles and think, why should they eat when my children are hungry? The fairness system collapses when it becomes life or death. People prioritize their families over the group. The coalition dissolves. Timeline to failure, 2 to 4 months. Free rider problems appear immediately, but take weeks to generate serious conflict. Resource depletion accelerates the split. After 2 to 3 months, internal conflicts consume more energy than external survival challenges. The group fragments or gets targeted by predators who recognize their vulnerability. The blood bond. Family runs deep and narrow. This is the extended family grouping. Parents, siblings, cousins, all concentrating in one location. Blood ties as foundation, often a patriarch or matriarch as leader. Intense loyalty within the family, deep distrust of outsiders. Their structure looks like family structure as organizational structure. The father or grandfather leads. Adult children are lieutenants. Grandchildren are labor force. Authority flows from family position, not capability. Insular and suspicious. They don't trust outsiders. They don't interact or trade with other groups unless necessary. They assume everyone outside the family is a threat. Hoarding. Everything the family has belongs exclusively to the family. They don't share with others. They accumulate and protect what's theirs. Defensive positions on family property. They fortify the family home or compound. They defend what's theirs. They don't expand beyond their land. Why do they form? Family clans form because blood ties represent the deepest trust. You trust family in ways you don't trust anyone else. When the world falls apart, you turn to family because they're the most reliable loyalty. They also form because families already have pre-existing relationships and dynamics. No need to establish hierarchy or build trust. It already exists. They're activating pre-existing bonds.
Geographic consolidation is natural. Family members live in different houses, but the same region. When collapse hits, they converge on one location, usually the patriarch's house or whoever has the most defensible property. Why do they fail? Genetic and skill diversity limitations. Everyone is related. Available skills are whatever skills family members have. Often there are gaps. Nobody knows medical care. Nobody knows how to fix engines. The clan can't cover all necessary capabilities because they're limited to family members' skills. Inbreeding of bad ideas. Family group dynamics mean certain ideas or values dominate. If the patriarch makes bad decisions, nobody effectively challenges him due to family dynamics of respect or fear. The group persists in bad strategies because family loyalty prevents necessary course corrections. Inability to grow or adapt. They can't recruit. They can't add skills they lack. They're stuck with who they have. If they lose someone, they can't replace them. Attrition kills them slowly because they refuse to bring in outsiders. Family conflicts become survival conflicts. Pre-existing family tensions explode under stress. Old resentments surface. The brother who always felt disrespected. The sister who thinks she should lead instead of dad. The cousin who never contributed and still doesn't. These personal conflicts escalate to breaking points. The family group dissolves because they're fighting each other instead of external threats. The patriarch-matriarch leadership problem. Leadership based on family position, not capability. When dad or grandpa makes bad decisions, the family structure doesn't allow effectively challenging them. Bad leadership, combined with loyalty structure that can't correct it, means the group follows bad decisions until they fail catastrophically. Distrust of outsiders limits opportunities. They could trade for food they needed. They could ally with another group for security. They could recruit someone with critical skills. They don't because they don't trust anyone outside family. This isolation means they miss opportunities that could save them and face threats alone that they could have faced collectively with allies. Timeline to failure: 4 to 8 months. Family clans last longer than warrior compounds or neighborhood coalitions because loyalty is real and internal trust is high. But lack of skills and inability to adapt eventually create situations they can't solve. They're internally stable but can't respond to external changes. When circumstances require something they're not capable of, they fail because they won't ask for help. The Raider Pack. Take everything, leave nothing. This is the predator group. They don't produce, they take. They target other groups, raid them, steal resources, move on. Purely parasitic survival strategy. They're mobile and aggressive. They're not defending territory. They're roaming areas, hitting targets, taking what they want. Heavily armed, but not disciplined. They have guns, they use them, but they're not military. They're violent opportunists. Flexible hierarchy based on strength. Whoever's most violent and successful leads. Leadership changes through conflict. It's unstable and brutal. No long-term planning. They think about the next raid, where to hit next, what to take. They don't plan months ahead because they don't think months ahead. Why do they form? Raider packs form from criminal elements and people who choose violence as primary strategy. When law enforcement collapses, people with criminal backgrounds or violent tendencies gravitate toward groups where those traits are advantages. They also attract people who failed at other survival strategies, people who couldn't produce their own food, couldn't build their own shelter, couldn't organize their own defense. They join raiders because stealing from others is easier than building their own capability. The raiding strategy offers immediate rewards. Hit a weaker group, take their stuff. Fast resources without the work of producing or preparing. This short-term thinking attracts raiders. Why do they fail? They consume resources faster than targets can regenerate. Raiders hit productive groups and steal their supplies, but they don't leave those groups functioning. They take everything. This means each target is destroyed and can't be hit again. Eventually, they run out of targets. All productive groups in their range have been eliminated or fled. Raiders have nothing left to raid. They create a coalition of enemies. Every group they attacked or threatened becomes their enemy. Eventually, surviving groups organize against the raiders. A coalition of defensive groups with a common enemy is stronger than the raiders. The raiders become prey. Internal violence destroys them from within. Raider groups are held together by success. When raids are successful and resources plentiful, the group stays together. When raids fail or resources are scarce, they turn on each other. Leadership is violently contested. The group fragments into smaller gangs or complete dissolution. Attrition from no recruitment. Every raid carries casualty risk. They lose men to defensive fire. They lose people to injuries and infections. They can't recruit effectively because no stable group wants to join raiders. Their numbers decline. Eventually, they're too small to successfully hit defended targets. No sustainable skills or production. They don't grow food, they don't purify water beyond looting, they don't build or maintain infrastructure. They depend entirely on finding groups who do these things and stealing from them. When those groups disappear, raiders have no capacity to sustain themselves. Timeline to failure: 3 to 9 months. Early collapse offers many targets. Raiders do well initially because there are many unprepared groups to victimize. By 3 to 6 months, easy targets are gone. Surviving groups are defended. Raiders have devastated their range and start failing. By 9 months, they're either dead, absorbed by other groups, or starved. The adaptive web. Loose ties, strong survival. This is the group that survives. It doesn't look like a group in the traditional sense. It's a network of individuals and small groups maintaining flexible relationships. They cooperate when beneficial. They stay independent when advantageous. They adapt to changing circumstances without rigid structure. Distributed structure with no central authority. There's no leader of the network. There are respected individuals with specialized knowledge or resources, but nobody commands. People make their own decisions and coordinate voluntarily. Small clusters of 2 to 5 people maximum. The network isn't one large group, it's many small groups or individuals who maintain contact and relationships. Each node is independent but connected. Specialized roles without hierarchy. Someone is the medic, someone is the mechanic, someone is the farmer, someone is the operator. These roles aren't hierarchical, they're recognized for their value. People respect expertise in each area. Flexible cooperation. Nodes work together on specific projects or challenges, then return to independent operation. Cooperation is project-based, not permanent. Information sharing network. Nodes communicate regularly. They share intelligence about threats, opportunities, resources, conditions in different areas. Information flows freely. Why do they form? Adaptive networks form from people who understand rigid structures fail in chaos. They've watched warrior compounds, community coalitions, family clans fail. They've learned that flexibility beats structure in unpredictable environments. They also form from people who value independence but recognize the need for cooperation. They don't want to be alone, but also don't want to surrender autonomy to hierarchy. The network gives them both, connection without control. Small node size happens naturally. 2 to 5 people is manageable without formal structure. Everyone knows everyone. Trust is personal. Decisions are fast because few people are involved. Larger groups require structure. Small groups don't. Why do they survive? Flexibility adapts to changing circumstances. When one approach fails, they switch. When a location becomes dangerous, they move. When a resource becomes scarce, they seek alternatives. Lack of rigid structure means they're not committed to failing strategies. Distributed risk. If one node fails, the network persists. If one person dies, the network continues functioning. There's no single point of failure, no leader to lose, no central base that can be destroyed. The network is resilient because it's distributed. Specialization without dependency. Each node has some capability, but nodes trade skills and resources with other nodes. The medic trades medical care for food from the farmer. The mechanic fixes the vehicle in exchange for salvaged parts. Everyone benefits from others' specialization without being completely dependent on any single person. Information advantage. Because nodes are distributed across a geographic area and share information, the network knows more than any individual group. They see threats coming. They spot opportunities. They make better decisions because they have better information. They avoid all other groups' failure modes. No rigid hierarchy to break. No democracy to slow decisions. No exclusive membership limiting skills. No aggressive posture creating enemies. No parasitic strategy depleting targets. The network deliberately avoids the failure patterns of other group types. Low visibility. To outsiders, the network doesn't look like a group. No compound, no patrols, no obvious structure. Raiders don't recognize the network as a target. Other groups don't see the network as a threat. This invisibility provides security. Can grow or shrink organically. If someone compatible comes along, they can integrate into the network. If someone becomes a liability, they can be excluded. The network can contract during hard times and expand during better times. This flexibility in membership is impossible for rigid groups. Timeline to survival. Indefinite. The adaptive network has no failure timeline because it doesn't have the structural vulnerabilities other groups have. It can persist as long as living members exist. Years, decades, it's the only group structure sustainable indefinitely. The common pattern explaining why 4 groups fail and 1 survives. The 4 failed groups share characteristics that doom them. Rigid structure. Warrior, community, and family groups have defined structures that don't adapt well. Structure creates efficiency in stable environments, but collapse isn't stable. Rigid structures break under unpredictable pressure. Central points of failure. Each failing group has something that, if destroyed, eliminates the whole group. The warrior compound's commander, the community coalition's shared resources, the family clan's patriarch, the raider gang's successful raids. When that central element fails, the group fails. Inward focus with blind spots. Warrior groups focus on security and neglect resource sustainability. Community groups focus on fairness and ignore security threats. Family clans prioritize loyalty and miss skill gaps. Raiders prioritize raids and lack long-term survival. Each group has a blind spot that eventually kills them. Inability to adapt to what actual collapse requires. Each group is optimized for what they think collapse is: military operations, community cooperation, family protection, predatory raids. But actual collapse requires flexibility, diverse skills, sustainable production, long-term thinking. Only the adaptive network is built for reality instead of expectation. The adaptive network survives because flexibility is the core principle. Everything in the network is designed to adapt: membership, structure, strategy, location. When conditions change, the network changes. This is the opposite of rigid groups that break when conditions exceed their structural capacity. Distributed resilience, no central failure points. The network is robust through distribution. You'd have to eliminate every node to end it, and nodes can regenerate through recruitment or reproduction over time. Reality-based instead of ideology. The network isn't trying to preserve military order, democratic values, family loyalty, or predatory success. It's trying to survive. They do what works. What doesn't work, they stop. This pragmatism beats ideology every time. Long-term thinking embedded. Because the network is sustainable, members think long-term. They're not wasting resources. They're not creating unnecessary enemies. They're not depleting their range. They're building capability that will persist years into the future. The counterintuitive truth. Everyone thinks the warrior compound survives. They're armed, they're trained, they're organized, they look like winners. But looking capable isn't the same as being capable. The warrior compound's strengths, their weapons, structure, aggressive posture, become their weaknesses. They consume resources they can't replace. They create enemies they can't defeat. They follow leaders whose training doesn't match the situation. They die well-armed and organized.
The adaptive network looks weak. Loosely connected, no obvious hierarchy, not heavily armed, no impressive facilities. It doesn't look like it will make it. But looking weak while being strong is the ultimate survival position. The network doesn't attract predators. It doesn't trigger coalition enemies. It doesn't waste resources maintaining structure. It doesn't break when conditions change. It survives quietly while impressive groups collapse loudly. Which group are you building? Look at your own preparation or your community. What group pattern are you following? If you're building a tactical compound with military structure, you're on a 3 to 6 month failure timeline. Rigid hierarchy and resource consumption will kill you unless you transition to something more adaptive. If you're organizing neighborhood cooperation based on fairness and democracy, you're in a 2 to 4 month failure window. Free riders and slow decisions will destroy you unless you create smaller, more accountable structures. If you're planning to survive with just your family, you're stable for 4 to 8 months, but heading toward failure from skill gaps and isolation. You need to build a network of contacts outside your family, or accept you can't adapt when conditions require skills you don't have.
If you're considering predator survival, you're setting yourself up for 3 to 9 months of initial success, followed by violent death when you've depleted your range and created a coalition of enemies. If you're not in a group yet, build an adaptive network. Trusted relationships in small clusters, specialized expertise with trade, information sharing, flexibility, independence with cooperation. This is the structure that endures. How to build an adaptive network. Start with 2 to 4 people you trust deeply. This is your core node. Skills should be diverse. Trust should be absolute. Identify 3 to 5 other individuals or small groups in your area with different skills or resources. These become other nodes. You don't integrate with them, you establish relationships. Create regular information exchange. Meet periodically. Share what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what threats or opportunities exist. No formal structure, just information flow. Cooperate on specific projects that benefit everyone, building defenses, sharing harvests, trading skills. Project-based cooperation that doesn't require permanent integration. Keep node sizes small. When a node grows beyond 5 or 6 people, it splits into 2 nodes that remain connected. Small groups are manageable without hierarchy. Maintain independence while keeping connection. You're not forming a compound or organization, you're maintaining relationships that provide mutual benefit without sacrificing autonomy. The brutal conclusion. 5 groups form in every collapse: the warrior compound, the neighborhood coalition, the family clan, the raider pack, the adaptive network. 4 of them fail within 3 to 9 months. Rigid structures break, central points fail, blind spots kill. Inability to adapt destroys them. 1 survives indefinitely: the adaptive network. Flexible structure, distributed resilience, reality-based pragmatism, long-term thinking. The group everyone expects to survive, the heavily armed warrior compound, fails fast. The group nobody expects to survive, the loose interconnected network, persists indefinitely. Structure kills. Flexibility survives. Independence with cooperation beats hierarchy. Small trusted groups trading with each other beat large unified organizations. This isn't theory, it's the pattern observed across every historical collapse. The impressive organized groups fail. The flexible adaptive networks always persist. Build the network. Stay small, stay flexible, cooperate without integrating, specialize and trade, share information, avoid rigid structure. This is how you survive when every other group has failed.